Aaron, how do you market yourself more effectively?
Look, that's an awesome question, and that's where we are right now. So let's break it down. It comes into two categories. First of all, there is marketing and prospecting, and I think people get those two things intertwined and confused.
So what's the difference? I do. Yep.
Okay, so let's look at prospecting. Prospecting is, I've been out to your house, you'll say you're selling in a month. So prospecting is the physical, I'm face-to-face with you, or I'm following you up or speaking to you on an individual basis. Where the marketing is completely different. Marketing is to many. So marketing could be a bulk SMS to 2,000 people. It could be a bulk letter saying spring has arrived, it's a great selling time, or happy Christmas, or whatever it is. So the marketing is the generic front-end marketing campaign, the letters, the mass distribution, which then filters. There might be 2,000 people in there and 50 might be interested, then that marketing brings those 50 people to you. Now you've got those 50 leads or those 50 warm prospects, now you physically do the prospecting with those people.
Aaron, if you had 100 people that you were going to contact for the first time, have you got any stats on how many times you have to contact them and what is the response rate as you actually work through those number of contacts?
I love it. 0 to 9, people don't know you exist. You're not imprinted in their brain yet. 9 to 15, they remember who you are. 18 to 24, you become a household name. So my business dramatically shifted and almost doubled within a 12-month period when my database matured from 0 to 9, then 9 to 15. As soon as we hit about that 15, 16 mark, all of a sudden, as Tom Panos says, I become the attraction agent. I didn't know the numbers until I went and had a look in my own database. No one ever told me, do 18 points of contact and people are going to remember you. The reason why senior agents are more successful than junior agents is not because they're better skilled, it's just that they've had time to develop those touch points. Now, if you can find a way to accelerate those touch points and get to 18 really fast, well, you're going to have that same relationship, that same trust point with those people as this more senior agent, because that's what he's been or she's been able to do.
So what are the numbers? What are the touch points, Aaron?
Throughout my marketing campaign, within a 12-month period, I deliver 18 to 24 touch points, let that be via letter, email, or SMS. Okay. Then on the flip side, with the prospecting, the target and the goal is to make 30 prospecting calls a day, Monday to Friday. It's always a give to get strategy.
What does that mean?
Give to get is doing different to other agents in regards to a lot of, like myself, I get phone calls every day from telemarketers trying to sell me a phone system. And I'm sure everybody's had that phone call and nobody's excited about that call because we don't know who they are. We've got no interest in their product and all of a sudden they're trying to drag us up onto their level and sell us something. As people and consumers, we don't like that. But as real estate agents, that's exactly what we do every day. And it's a wonder that we're not ranked too highly in how much people like real estate agent stakes. So for me, I always start with, okay, I want to add value to this person. I want to add value to this transaction and I want to be the person, even if they're not selling today, I want them to know that, hey, when they do want to sell, I've got some information that's been able to help them.
This is the difference, isn't it, between push and pull marketing? Push marketing, as we now know, is dead.
Yes.
Pull marketing, this is what give to get is?
Absolutely. So you have something of value that you can give them. It could be a free report or a free offer or an update or something that they actually want to receive from you. So then they're more likely, as you said, pull, they come to you.
There's a great book by Seth Godin called Purple Cow, which is how to stand out. What is your purple cow?
The philosophy in my office is when they zig, you zag. So if everybody's doing free listing kits, do something different. If someone's doing free appraisals, do something different. For me, one of the things in my marketplace that I use is a book called How to Sell Your Home for More. And the promise is in the title.
That's the book written by Ray Wood.
That's the book written by Ray Wood. So every person that is going on the market, I've never met anybody that said, hey, can you help me sell for less? Everybody wants to know how to get a great result. And I use that as part of my prospecting plan. So instead of going free appraisal or just sold, I say, hey, we've just sold this property. The owner just got a great result. And here's one of the tools that helped them. This is the book that helped them, give them the information, the education on how to present their property.
Aaron, do you give a copy of that book out?
Look, I do, but the way I give it out is in my marketing. Instead of doing free appraisals, I offer, saying if anybody wants a copy of this book, get in contact with me. So then it's that pull strategy that you talked about. Obviously, we swap their first name, their last name, their contact details. You don't talk about real estate. You just say, here's the book that you requested. If you have any information, let me know. I put my details in the front cover. And then it's always the throwaway line right at the end. As you're walking away, you say, oh, P.S., I know it's a long shot, but did you have any intentions of selling over the next 3 to 6 months? and just shut up and see what they say. But you've given them something which they appreciate. You've had a quick chat about how the market's going, buyer market, seller market, recent sales, letting them know what's going on in the marketplace, and then it's right as you're walking away, hey, look, I know it's a long shot, and it's always a long shot, but just wanted to see what your plans were for the next 3 to 6 months. And then, you're not just launching straight in for it. It's, it's warmed up, you get to know them a little bit more.
Hello and welcome to our Friday update on what's happening with the auction markets right around Australia with the compliments of CoreLogic, and Geoff White from CoreLogic will join me in just a moment as we have a look at the sobering auction numbers ahead. They're falling by about 25%. Geoff, with all the details in just a moment.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
Hello once again to Geoff White from CoreLogic. G'day, Geoff. How you doing?
Yeah, g'day, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. We're going to have a look at the final statistics, the final clearance rates from the last week before we take you into what's happening ahead. What do we see, mate? Clearance rates, 52.5%, down a little bit on last week.
Yeah, the 52.5 is the second highest this year. So on the 7th of April, we saw 52.6. So it's been hovering in the low 50s, and we've seen it again. But second highest for the year at 52.5 from 1,479 auctions. I think the good news story out of the week was Sydney and Melbourne. Sydney with 57.2% from 539. Now that 57.2 is the highest clearance rate in Sydney since the 13th of May last year. So wow. The 13th of May last year. So, it's nearly pretty much 12 months. And so that shows you that, perhaps we're coming out the other end.
That's good news.
It is, yeah. And sometimes you take this, those extra little percentages, and it's been creeping a bit, although it's been up and down, but this last week, from a pretty good number of 539, so 57.2, yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't read too much into the clearance rates that fall between Monday and Friday because, as you rightly pointed out to me before we started the show, quite often the late reporting is pass-ins, and you'd expect it to fall a bit, which you've quite often said to me, and that's going to be the case. It's interesting, Geoff, just looking at these figures, sometimes confidence follows what is a natural improvement, and the confidence level would have to be in the numbers, that is for sellers, but the confidence for buyers is in clearance rates. And if we can see an increase in clearance rates, we can see that buyers are gaining a bit more confidence. So it may just follow that we'll see more auction numbers over the next few weeks. That's the Kevin Turner theory.
Yeah, and the Kevin Turner theory could be right too. That's right. So it's just with the election coming up, that weekend it'll probably stall a bit, but then we'll see some normality after that, I think. But I think Sydney did well. Melbourne 56.6 from 672. Now, I went back and looked at the previous clearance rate, save and except the Easter weekend, which we recorded a result. But that was only 50 auctions, so I'm not reading a lot into that. But if you were to remove that week, it's the best Melbourne clearance rate last week since the 9th of September 2018, where Melbourne had 60%. So those Melbourne and Sydney clearance rates this week are right up there.
Very encouraging,
Very encouraging, that's right. And, of course, nationally second best for the year. So Brisbane obviously down, which is an interesting one because, lower numbers and lower percentage. But look, I'm not too concerned about that. I think the market in Brisbane is still showing some good signs, so that could bounce back next week. Who knows? Adelaide just under the 50 there at 45.5. Sorry, Kevin.
No, I was going to say Adelaide was the only cap city that actually went up from Monday to today. When it was 43.5% on Monday. So
Yeah.
I know we don't draw a lot from that, but I just thought I'd mention it. It's quite interesting.
No, yeah, that's true. And Perth, obviously 14.9. Obviously, not so good over there, but good to see that they're got auctions and pushing the auction method of marketing. So
yeah, what about Canberra? Gee, Canberra's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's the one market that. Well, I suppose it could be a lot of the politicians selling up, maybe with the election coming up. Do you think?
Yeah, maybe that's right. I mean, who knows? It's a very different market because it's driven by government businesses
Absolutely.
and departments and things like that. So, 50% in Canberra from 54. So it was a pretty all over the place week, really. But with Melbourne and Sydney driving that overall weighted average with their good clearance rates, yeah.
If Labor, in fact, do win the federal election, Canberra might be a pretty good market to look at because I really believe, Labor have got, and I'll say this, you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to, but Labor seem to have a history of putting on a lot more public servants, and we see a lot more uptake in the market under a Labor government. Yeah,
that's true. History shows that. Yeah, so you're right. So from that point of view, the Canberra market could be better off. That's
one
right.
to watch. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
How about just before we have a look at the auctions, let's have a look at the sub-regions. We'll go to Sydney firstly and pull up our second graphic. I noticed Northern Beaches, the only sub-region that improved during the week, went from 61 to 65. But gee, have a look at Inner West.
Yep, Inner West was the highest sub-region if you were to combine Sydney and Melbourne. 45 auctions, so middle of the road in terms of numbers. But 71.8%. And as you say, we often see between the preliminary clearance rate and the final clearance rate a fall in the percentage because we mop up those that haven't sold. So that 71.8 is a real genuine final clearance rate that's really strong. So
very strong.
Few in the 60s there. Some of the usual suspects there. City and Inner South 62 from 59. If you look at North Sydney Hornsby, always a very good one there with the auction numbers of 81 and had 63.1. So that's pretty strong. And as you mentioned, Northern Beaches. So there's a few in the 60s there, Kevin, and quite a few in the 50s. So overall, the Sydney market's showing a pretty good clearance rates across most of those sub-regions. Yeah,
indeed. Yep. Okay, we'll go to Melbourne and have a look at the sub-regions there. All pretty much down on the reporting from earlier in the week, but still some reasonable numbers in there, Geoff.
Yeah, of course, you've got the inner parts of Melbourne, which is more of the traditional auction areas within the Melbourne market, 138 auctions with 60.2. So that's probably one of the reasons why Melbourne's had a good clearance rate this week. Inner East still doing well and always around that Melbourne clearance rate. So it's at 57.5 from 50. And of course, you look the Inner South and the North East, both over 60 there, Inner South at 69.4. So a few in the 40s, and the West is still performing well, at 55.9 from 81. So, a few in the 40s, but overall pretty good in Melbourne. We're seeing a few more 60s than we saw a few weeks ago. So that means, maybe there's a bit of a turnaround in the market there.
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice to see both Sydney and Melbourne holding, that mid to late 50% clearance rate. Even if they could crack up into 60, it'd be a good sign.
Yes, that's right, Kevin, exactly. And I think you'd probably be a bit more pleased if Brisbane came up a bit, I would suspect.
Well, that's only self-interest, mate. But I think they're all individual properties, and we're getting a good response to ours. I think, as I mentioned to you, we had 23 inspections last weekend, 23 groups through, and hoping for another lot. We had an open home last night as well, and that went extremely well. So, all things considered, we're in a good location and we've presented the house well, so we'll just wait and see. It's all about buyer confidence. So, mate, just having a look at the options for this week coming up, all down a little bit except for Canberra. Now, here we go again. My theory about politicians selling, mightn't be too far off beam, I reckon.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, look, it's interesting. It is down, as you said, about 25% overall. So you take a bit off all of the capital cities, and particularly Sydney and Melbourne. So with Sydney 431, Melbourne 508, we've got a number of suburbs in Melbourne that have got good numbers. The likes of Mount Waverley, which is not an inner area; it's more of a middle inner area. With 10 auctions scheduled to go into the hammer. So, you're seeing those sorts of numbers in some of those suburbs still. Brisbane 73. So that, based on what we've had the previous week and this week, it's seeing a bit of a fall.
It has,
So, look, it'll be interesting just to see how we go with the lower numbers. A lot of media about policy relating to housing and what the market's going to do if the ALP get in or what if the Libs of Coalition get in. So, people might be just watching that between now and the 18th. So I think you might have pegged the right date to go to auction, Kevin, being after the election.
Mate.
I think
I'm
yeah.
pretty happy with the 25th. Get the election out of the way, and then there's a little bit of surety in the market. And I noticed too, the Institute in New South Wales, it might have been Victoria, put out a press release on the 50 most impacted suburbs. According to CoreLogic in Melbourne, that are going to be impacted if a Labor government get in. So, there's a lot of uncertainty about what the hell is going to happen. That's why it'd be good to get the election out of the way, I think, Geoff.
Yeah. Look, if the ALP are elected, and they're looking like they're favourites at the moment, but if they are elected, it could actually see a little bit of that strong market activity between now and the end of the year, because those investors that have perhaps been holding off may well say, look, I'll go and buy now, lock in, take advantage of the grandfathering clause of the negative gearing, and then they're set. So that could actually see a little bit of a stimulus to the market in the short term. Long term might be a different story, but it'll be interesting just to see. So I think a lot of vendors and agents are sort of waiting the outcome of the 18th. You're right.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, mate. I think you're right. So we'll wait and see. Hey, mate, always good catching up with you. Have a great weekend. Look forward to catching up with you on Monday, and we'll have a look at what the results were from this weekend. But just in summary, Geoff White from CoreLogic telling us 1,144 properties going to auction in the next week, and we'll be watching very closely to see if Sydney and Melbourne can hold that mantle around the mid-50s and hopefully crack up into the 60% clearance rate. Hey, Geoff, talk to you on Monday, my friend.
Cheerio, Kevin. All the best.
Evening, Clara. Home, please.
David, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking of a different time is all. It was a time when I used to sit up there, Driving wasn't just about being taken from place to place, but going somewhere. Feeling something along the way.
Please, David, you should relax.
I'm afraid that's just the problem.
David, where are you going? David? David?